Hello, I'm Chris Harrison, and welcome to tonight's special episode of Women Tell All, the Bachelor EIP edition, where we evaluate the clinical implications of today's research. This season, we've been following our Bachelor Pedro, who is a level 1B randomized controlled trial by Ms. Sahal et al., who looks at the effects of cupping on chronic neck nonspecific pain. Let's meet Pedro now. How's it going, Chris? I'm great. Looking good, Pedro. Yeah, thanks. You too. Oh, thanks. So tell me a little bit more about yourself. Well, for starters, I recruited participants through a local newspaper and a website from 2009 to 2011 who were experiencing chronic nonspecific neck pain. All right, sounds interesting. So what did the treatment entail throughout all of this? So those that met the inclusion criteria were randomized into a treatment group that went through 2 sessions a week of cupping for 10 minutes, and then the rest were put into a control group that underwent just normal standard treatment. Okay, so what were some of the measures that you used to get the results you wanted? The primary outcome measure that I used was pain intensity at rest. Okay, sounds great. So before we hear from the women, I want you to tell me more about your results. Well, I found that cupping massage helps reduce pain and increase function and quality of life with people who were experiencing the chronic nonspecific neck pain. All right, well, without further ado, let's go ahead and meet the women and hear what they have to say. Here tonight we have validity, reliability, sensitivity, and Crystal. Validity, we'll go ahead and start with you. What did you think about Pedro and his study?
Well, for starters, he included his inclusion and exclusion criteria in the methods section.
But he wasn't able to get key outcome measures for at least 85% of his subjects.
That wasn't my fault. I started with a sample size of 50 participants.
A sample size of 50? Are you kidding? I know for a fact it wasn't that big. You told me in the fantasy suite that you lost 9 due to bad weather and boredom, and you didn't even end up with outcome measures for them.
Whoa. But I did do an intention to treat analysis, which does mean that the results are more significant.
But you didn't clearly state the effect size, and there was only a 36% reduction in pain. Also, you said your effect size was robust, whatever that means.
Robust?
Well, he told me that the PTs, the assessors, or the participants weren't blinded into which group they were randomized into, so I feel he was a little biased.
Okay, that's true, but all participants were randomized into different groups, and the allocation was hidden in a sealed envelope.
Yeah, and the results of the between-group comparisons were reported for all outcome measures.
I mean, I guess that's true, and he did include validity measures and point measures to all the outcome measures, so I guess we had some closure.
All right, well, Pedro, thank you so much for your time. I think we might get a little bit more honest input from the girls, so let's go ahead, we'll send you backstage and see what else they have to say. Okay, so ladies, Pedro is backstage, but I do want to hear more. So validity, tell me about some of the strengths with this study.
So some good things that happened were the control group was allowed the same treatment later on in the study, an intention to treat was performed, and we were randomized into different groups.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. Now, Crystal, what about some of the weaknesses? Were you blindsided at all?
I wasn't blindsided because there was no blinding, which is totally biased. Also, the effect size was not listed in the results section.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good. What about you, sensitivity? Were there any threats to the internal or external validity?
I felt threatened internally because there was no experimental blinding, so the experimenter was biased, and I feel like he just took advantage of all of us. And externally, there were a lot of adverse effects, like broken hearts.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Overall, though, is this something that you guys would recommend or give to your patients?
Overall, we just felt like there was way too much potential for bias since there was no blinding done. We feel like there could be better research in the future that look at the effects of cupping for nonspecific neck pain.
Okay, well, ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Tune in next week for the biggest and most dramatic season finale of EIP.
Our file.